Hey guys, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Maggie.
And we interview Asian entrepreneurs around the world to amplify their voices and empower Asians to pursue their dreams and goals.
We believe that each person has a message and a unique story from their entrepreneurial journey that they can share with all of us. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us. His name is Benny Luo. Benny is the founder and CEO of NextShark and a member of the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. NextShark is an American digital media and entertainment company whose content is focused mainly on Asian American and Asian news. Benny graduated from UC Irvine, where he earned his BA in psychology and cognitive sciences. Benny, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Big fan.
Yeah, we're a huge fan of you, Benny. You know, we've been following you for years and years now, and we want to let our audience learn more about you. You know, like what was your upbringing like, and how did you develop such a strong hustle mentality?
That's such a good question. So I was born and raised in the Bay Area, to Chinese parents that, immigrated from southern China in the 1980s. Even though the Bay Area was quite diverse at the time, I still went through, racism and discrimination growing up. The story that I always use is one of my earliest experiences with like racism was, in middle school, actually, be out in public, going to movie theaters with some friends, and at the time walking by a nice couple who I thought was a nice couple at the time. And I remember like me not saying a single word to this couple. It was literally just like, made eye contact. And, I think I even said, excuse me, as I was like walking past them to, go to my seat. Mm-hmm. And I remember hearing in the back of me as I'm walking by the old gentleman going like effing Chinaman to me. And I was just like, wow, like, this is kind of crazy. And I think even at the time, I didn't even really know fully that, Chinaman was like a derogatory term. Also, going through school, I mean, people called me dog eater, they would call me Chinatown and everything. And some of the fights that I had, in school was, racially motivated. So I definitely had, a personal affinity to Asian American identity and my own experiences growing up. And I was definitely, into that whole like Asian pride phase. I mean, I don't know if anybody's from the Bay Area. I think you both are from the Bay Area too. I mean,
I am, but he's not.
LA.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, Maggie. I mean, there was a time like in the early, like,
Asian pride. Life. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Asian pride. I mean, I think it was a very West Coast centric campaign. I think when I talk to East Coasters, they don't really know about it, but, I was very into that. Didn't think that I would really ever, form a company that allowed me to kind of be in that community too. So, to be able to kind of have a small business and a small startup on my own while also, giving back and activating, a community that's very dear to me is pretty like, it's pretty gratifying, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, in terms of answering your question of hustle mentality, I mean, I have the typical immigrant story with my parents. That story of coming in with like, I think my dad said he had like $50 in his pocket. My mom said she had like $100 or something. And and for a good, like, I think my first, like, 1 to 2 years, like when I was born, I mean, we were living, I think we piled up 8 to 10 people, at an apartment, not just an apartment. It was like at a basement of where we were renting from a family above. I would say that my family story is a natural American dream where, they worked at the restaurants in the daytime, and then they would, study English at night, get back home after like, going through transportation by 12 a.m., sleeping and doing it all over again the next day. And so I think that sort of lifestyle and seeing my parents like work so hard as we went older kind of like, made me understand early on that you really got to work for, what you want really. And kind of seeing that process and seeing how much my parents struggled. I mean, they were barely home because they were working so hard. So my grandma practically raised me. And so basically after I entered college, I really wanted to kind of put myself on that path to, financial independence. And so naturally my freshman year at UC Irvine, I was working up to 4 jobs at once. I mean, I could still count it. I worked at the UCI computer store where I would drive this big anteater truck around, like delivering, computers to faculty members. That's funny because I actually like, I nearly learned to drive on that car because I had just gotten my license at the time.
Wow.
I didn't even own a car. I mean, I was legally allowed to drive. It's just that, I I didn't have a car at the time, and I was still kind of learning, even though I passed and stuff. And so I always joke that I'm so used to driving a big truck now to this day over a small car, because it's like what I'm kind of familiar with. And yeah, I mean, so UCI Computer Store, I was working as a Dell computer campus rep. So I was marketing Dell computers to UCI students. I was also a campus note taker for people that had disabilities on campus. And, so it gave me the opportunity to attend class. It motivated me to attend class while still making money at the same time. And my fourth one, I guess you could say my most interesting one in this context, is that I actually worked at the Manhattan GMAT as a campus rep. And my boss at the time was Andrew Yang.
Oh, wow.
That's insane.
That is incredible.
Wait, I know right before the podcast, we were wondering if we ever met. I think I know how we met already. I used to work at the campus bookstore.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, for almost all 4 years of college. And I was stacking books almost every day. So I'm pretty sure we bumped shoulders like 10 or 11 or 12 years ago. That's why we have such a hard time connecting. But yeah, I think I met you back in campus.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if you worked at the computer store, then you might have seen me, because I would try to find like any way to like any hour to make money. And so even though I wasn't downstairs, I started doing hours like at the UCI Computer Store too. So I would be helping students.
Yeah, with the swiping cards every morning.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's how we met. I was like, I know Benny from college. Yeah. But I can't remember where and what.
Remember the name tags that we used to wear too and everything?
Yes,
oh man, those are the good old days.
Yeah, those are the great days, dude.
Oh man, it's like a big flashback for you too.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, so for the listeners listening, Brian and I actually went
some context, please.
Yeah, we actually went to UC Irvine together. We graduated at the same time, but we never really connected like this until like now. So it's so interesting how this full circle moment.
That's awesome. I mean, first thing for me, seeing NextShark and seeing you come on UC Irvine, I've always kept my eyes on you since the very beginning. And I know that I mentioned to you this before, like, I think I was literally like your in between 100 to 200 first followers on Instagram or something. Because I was following you the whole time throughout your entire journey, because I was so inspired to see people come out UC Irvine and do something with themselves, because you don't see a lot of that, unfortunately, So super inspired, man. I know that you also started companies before NextShark that got acquired. What was that process like? And what was that like creating a company in the midst of a recession of all things?
Yeah. It's interesting because, I was always, I knew that there was a recession going on. I mean, I read the news, I read like, the housing market crashes and everything like that. But I honestly wasn't that deep educated in myself. And I always had this mentality where it's like, I don't care what's going, at least early on, right? It was just really head down. Like, don't care what's going on around you. Like, you just got to hustle, you just got to work. And, just looking back, I mean, immigrant parents, right? Like, they always kind of embedded in my head, hey, I came here with like barely anything. I had to work, a lot to get to where I am today. And so, I would say that, for lack of a better word, maybe I didn't pay no mind to that as much. I would say I just kind of like, I always kind of looked at, the people around me, because in the midst of all this chaos and stuff, there was people around me that were still succeeding and still finding ways to, make a living. And I think that I just had that no nonsense approach where it's like, I just have to make it work. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. And granted, I mean, I wasn't necessarily the smartest person, honestly. I mean, I struggled throughout school, like all my life. I was tested very early on to have ADHD, dyslexia, and, so it was hard for me to really focus in class. And I think I remember every single year up until like middle school, during parent teacher conference, it would be something along the lines of like, me almost getting held back a grade. And for some reason, I would always like find a way to barely, get by. So, that's kind of the school of thought where I come from. I mean, I felt like I came from almost like the bottom of the barrel compared to, all my other peers that were around me. And so my decision for, wanting to, work so much was just that number one, I had to figure out a way to like not get ahead, but kind of catch up to all the peers around me,
right.
And so that was definitely kind of tough. But I think, overall, I think I still have that same mentality even today. I mean, as you guys know, I mean, Next Shark is still a bootstrap startup, and we've been around for 7 years. I've never raised a single round of funding, loans, or anything within this company. And so I think that I still have that sort of hustle mentality, you know, with me. But I think nowadays, and now that we're kind of getting bigger and everything now, my struggle is trying to take myself away from everything that's going on, because like I remember at some point, I think one of my, you know, people that advised me, I think they said it greatly. They were like, hey, are you working for your company? Or are you working on your business? Right. And because at some point you have to make that distinction. And it's hard for somebody like me that's so hands-on. And, you know, I'm the type of guy where it's like, if I'm just sitting down and not really doing much, or if I spend most of my day answering emails, like I feel like that I'm not doing enough work. Yeah. If that makes sense. And so I'm trying to get better at taking myself away from certain situations and actually being a CEO.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that. I love how you talk about how, you know, you struggled a little bit in school, because I think, especially in Asian culture, we tie so much of like our academics to how successful we are. Right. And I think a lot of people kind of go back and forth on whether or not college or academics have any meaning to whether we will do well in entrepreneurship. Right. And so what did your parents think of that as you were kind of graduating from UC Irvine and kind of thinking about what you wanted to do and, you know, going into starting all these businesses? What was your parents' reaction?
Before that, I wanted to appreciate the chip in your shoulder and that hunger and that drive, you know, because I personally feel the same way a lot. And when you talked about that, I'm like, man, like this is the reason why I look up to Benny, you know, because so I have a huge chip in my shoulder too. And I feel like all these other orgs ahead of me or whatever, so I have to work extra hard because I personally feel like I'm not that smart, you know. I personally feel like I need to work harder because unfortunately I don't see myself as an equal yet. You know, and it's crazy hearing that from you too. Like we look up to you, Benny. Yeah. Like we see your successes, we see your connections, your impact, your the way you positively like grow your community. And it's crazy to hear Benny has that chip on his shoulder, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think even before we started Asian Hustle Network, we looked up to you and we were just so inspired by Next Shark, you know, and just to hear you, you know, being so humble and saying, you know, maybe school is not everything. And, you know, because you struggle with school and, you know, I also struggle with school as well. And it's, it means a lot to me to, you know, just see your success with Next Shark and to see where you are at now.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And honestly, give you guys more credit too. Seriously. I mean, you guys have done such good work and, you know, activating, you know, our community of, you know, of different leaders within our community and, you know, just bringing our community closer together in the context of, you know, small businesses and also supporting each other on top of that. And I always said too, is like, man, like that's so humbling to hear that you guys follow my work before Asian Hustle Network. And, you know, one of the things that I always like to pass, and I do mean this, I mean, there's a side of me where it's like, yeah, I definitely, you know, want to win as an entrepreneur. I'm a capitalist. I want to grow this company and everything. But, you know, as I keep doing this work, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, if this work helps inspire like, you know, current and future generations to, you know, even, you know, to do it differently or even bigger and better than me. I mean, I think that's all, you know, even for us, that's all we could really hope for, right? You know, what's that destination, right? If it's not that, then at least we can hopefully inspire the next generation to, you know, to do it better, right? And I guess in the context of, you know, what you were talking about my parents and everything, I mean, dude, I mean, think of it this way. I mean, when I was born, I mean, they had high hopes for me. I remember, you know, my mom telling me, yeah, they, you know, doctor, lawyer was the one that was kept being thrown around me at that time. And I think that, I mean, I don't know if I hate to admit this, but I think that, you know, for some time, I felt that my parents have kind of given up on me in some ways because they had such high hopes for me of like, you know, being really good in academics or being really good at, you know, or doing something that would really make them proud in their context. And growing up, I mean, you know, when you talk about the stereotypes of Asian parents, you know, comparing you to other kids, I mean, that was so true for me. I mean, I think that, you know, I heard a lot of stuff about, oh yeah, this parent got into, you know, oh, this person got into an Ivy League. Oh, this person got like all A's and everything. I even distinctively remember one thing. I think my dad, you know, pulled me aside when I got into UC Irvine and everything. I remember, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I think that there was either some sort of a gathering of some sort amongst like my mom and, you know, her friends or something. And they were all like talking about how, you know, they're so proud that their kids that got into Ivy Leagues. And, you know, my mom was the only person that didn't have a son that didn't get into an Ivy League. Right. And that sort of thought, kind of just, that happened well, even after I graduated college. And, for the most part, I think they kind of accepted that I wasn't an academic. And they kind of just accepted that, I would just do what I would want with my life. But I think that it really wasn't until like in recent years, like, that they started really kind of seeing my work and acknowledging what I've done. And I think it's funny because like I got on the Forbes 30 under 30 list in 2018. So I think that even for them, they didn't know how big of a big deal that was. And for a lot of people, that's how they market that list is that, hey, it's harder to get into that list than even to an Ivy League school, like a Harvard, Princeton or whatever it is. And so I think that when I told my mom that, I think she didn't really know how big of a deal it was until her friends started telling her about it. And then suddenly when her friends started telling her about it, then the next thing was 2 weeks later, I got featured on, Chinese local news. So obviously that's when, it all kind of comes together. Right. And so I think that for the most part now, I think that they kind of get an idea of what I'm doing. I think that on some level, like they are definitely, proud of me. But it was a grind, honestly. It was definitely a grind. And I think that maybe you guys could relate and maybe the listeners could relate on some levels. I mean, tensions between us and our family are definitely, no joke. And it's definitely something that I've experienced before. And even at my level of quote unquote success at the moment, there's still some things that to unpack, there too. Right.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with us. It's so vulnerable and it's so relatable to a lot of many different levels in terms of our lives and our community's lives too. There's always that conflict of like, what is the right thing to do? What is the traditional path? What is the untraditional path? What does success even look like? Like we have such a different perception of what success even looks like because, our parents struggle really hard and they're like, okay, for you to be happy, you have to do this, this, and this, because in their mind, they guarantee success. Mm-hmm. But we're living in a new world now where it's like, there's so many different possibilities. We can go in any different directions. And the biggest thing they're recognizing right now is like, is my kid happy? Can they be financially stable? That's two things we care about,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like the top thing that we want is for us to make our parents happy and proud, which is so hard in the Asian culture, but also because of the generational gap, it's hard for them to know, like what are viable options as a career, right? And so I can see how, your parents, they didn't actually be fully proud until they saw you in the Chinese news article. And that was so similar to how like Brian and I were like too. I think we got into like the Vietnamese channel and,
even so, my
Chinese channel.
Like, what are you doing? They always ask me that. I'm kind of curious too, like throughout your journey with Nextshark, because you have been remarkably consistent since year one. And this is like year 7 or 8, right? Like, what was that entire journey like, and how'd you pivot into like Asian news? I think I was following your articles early on. It wasn't focused on Asian news yet, and you made your pivot over there. I want to understand like what was that whole entire journey like?
Yeah, and talk about what you focused on before. Like, I think it was like entrepreneurship focused, right?
Yeah.
So after I sold my first company, New Media Rockstars, it was basically a digital publication covering the rise of like digital celebrities, like YouTubers, the rise of like online streaming and everything. So I ended up selling that company in 2013, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I remember that I really liked entrepreneurship. I had met a lot of like, great entrepreneurs, and I was seeing this rise of like young entrepreneurs doing their side hustles and starting companies. And there was that culture of, the startup space and everything. And I wanted to create a site that kind of spoke out to that generation. So so I took like, $3,000 of my own money, and, I started it. I distinctly remember that I was doing, I was still like pretty much the only writer on the site at the time. My girlfriend at the time, now wife, she was finishing her degree at UCLA, and I was like still writing articles at the cafeterias of UCLA at that time. And I mean, it did okay. I did it for about 2 years, but we were kind of at a crossroads where we weren't necessarily reaching a certain scale where I thought that I could really raise funding. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I was meeting a lot of great figures and everything, but something I felt was still is missing in my life, and I wasn't exactly sure what that was. And I would say maybe about 2 years in, naturally, we noticed that a lot of our Asian-centric content was doing well. So naturally, a lot of the startup people that we covered, a lot of business leaders that we covered, some of them happened to, be Asian American or have an Asian face. And I remember whenever I shared it on Facebook, and it would get shared a lot within the Asian American community. It seemed like a lot of people like, watching successful Asian faces, and we saw that we were kind of fulfilling a need. And I knew that there was there were issues with representation and everything. And obviously for me, that's hit close to my heart. I mean, even right after college, I had a small side project that I did with two friends. It was a blog called theotherasians.com. And that was focused on, covering, Asian Americans and non-stereotypical careers. But, that was just a fun project. We never saw it as a money-making project. It was something that, we wanted to do for us back to the community. So it kind of fizzled out as time went on, for us to focus on our lives. But yeah, I mean, 2 years in, we noticed, that increase in, interest for Asian American content, and we started doing more of it. And as we started growing that audience, people started recommending us to, cover different aspects of the Asian American experience. During the 2016 Olympics, people were DMing us going, hey, you guys should, cover, highlight athletes, because they don't really get that much press usually. So we were a little bit apprehensive at first because, again, we're business focused, right? But we decided to give it a shot. And I remember that even writing small write-ups like Vietnam winning the first Olympic gold medal, which is not a story that we broke. It was just something that we saw and thought was relevant, and we wrote it. I mean, that post went viral within the Asian American community. And that was such a big deal for, I guess, site owned by Asian people to feature, big news like that happening. Yeah. So we noticed, it looks like we're filling a pretty big void. So the genesis of the Next Shark that you see today, I definitely give a lot of credit to our current team and, the team before that built this. But we also have to give huge credits back to the community too, because it was us just really listening to the feedback that we were getting and the types of, stories that they felt were needed. And I think that it was definitely a natural calling for us in a sense where I felt a lot more fulfilled in the types of content that we were producing. Don't get me wrong. The downside to all of this is that it's not as lucrative as you would, as people would think. But I would say that this is probably one of the most gratifying and, gratifying times of my life. And so I wouldn't trade it really for anything. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about that.
I love that too. And I just love your persistency, consistency in making this happen, because I was following you for a while. I just remember for a while your page was not growing. And all of a sudden you went to exponential growth, and that comes to show for everyone listening here that, success doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time, a lot of iteration, a lot of belief. And I do want to dive deep into that too. Has there been any time where you almost shut Next Shark down because you're just like, this is not working? Or
all the time. I feel that if you're running a startup or a small business, if you're not thinking, if you don't feel like shutting down, or if you don't feel like you're on the brink of shutting down, every 3 to 6 months or something, you might be not working hard enough or, doing something wrong. I mean, building a startup is tough. I mean, what do they say? Back then, I mean, when I was covering startups and business, I mean, I've read figures from if you start a startup, even if you raise funding, you have a 75% chance or up to 95% chance of failure. And when you start to understand that, you start to really understand that the path to success is never linear. The path to what you're trying to do is never linear. And, we know this on a basic logical wisdom, right? Things rarely go to plan. And oftentimes, how I look at startups is that you have a feeling of where you want to be at, but you don't really know where to go. So you kind of just pick a path and you go, but you also have to be okay enough to turn back when and cognizant enough to know if it's the right or wrong decision, and be okay with turning back and be okay with cutting those losses of where you're going. And I think that, on our side, Yeah, I mean, we always have those conversations. We had that conversation last year when, COVID happened and, no one was really doing advertising and, our advertising revenues disappeared by 80% almost overnight. That was hard for us. And the reason why we were able to survive is because, we've always been really smart and frugal with the money. I mean, for myself, I live a very, very frugal lifestyle. I mean, even, at this company, if there's any sort of, if we get any sort of, any sort of growth or anything like that, from a revenue standpoint, like I always look at, seeing what we can do for, our workers first. Even most recently, I mean, I'm getting more speaking gigs now, corporate speaking gigs. They're asking me for speaking fees. And, what I'm telling them to do is, just, if anything, just donate to our news fund or something, because that's going to go back directly to our writers. And they need the money more than I do right now. And so my approach has always been, I kind of have an idea where I'm going, but I also have this really big focus on making sure the team's okay too. So I'm very involved with our team. I'm constantly in contact with them, asking them if they're okay, if there's certain things that I could do to make the situation better in any case, because how I look at it is at the end, like we're driving somewhere, we don't know where we're going. And it will be a shit show, moving forward. And so I have this sort of culture where, we're never afraid to pivot. We're never afraid of, changing and doing a 180 thing the next day. And, that just comes from that school of thought of, how do you survive? How do you stand the test of time as you, hustle and, go down this crazy road?
Yeah. I love that. I love how transparent you are. And when Brian asked how many times do you often think about shutting it, Benny answered that so fast all the time. And that just goes to show how
we think about that every 36 months too.
We think about that all the time. It's extremely hard. And it's exactly like you said, we have a vision of like where we want to go, but like, how do we get there? That's something that we all constantly have to think about all the time. And, just like you said, it shows that you're not afraid to pivot, just knowing that Nextshark started off as not as a media company that, focused on Asian news. And now you guys pivoted to something that was more along the lines of Asian news, just goes to show that, a lot of companies don't really start off the way they are today, right? There's always a lot of changes that go along the way. And so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, even if you look at history, sorry to cut you off, Brian, by the way. No, but I really like what, Maggie said is like, if you look at even history, right? Like, let's say Lamborghini, it started off as a tractor company. And then now like it makes luxury cars. And if you look at history for a lot of companies that you see today, they didn't really start off the way you think it did. And sometimes like they had to adapt to go with the times. Yeah. And I think that for anybody that wants to build something, you have to understand like, the world is moving faster and faster. The world is changing faster and faster. And so whatever you decide to build, you have to build it with the intention that you are welcoming change and pivots with open arms at any point in time. And that culture has to, trickle down to, your team as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
I love that analogy with Lamborghinis too, because, Lamborghinis we see today, it's like supercar prestige. They started as tractors and they went bankrupt for a bit. And then they got bought out and got reinvented into a supercar. So, the entrepreneur journey, you never know what's going to happen, but you just have to kind of stick with it and be very open to change. I feel that as soon as you close your eyes and ears to your customers, you're going to fail because you're not aware of what you need to do next. And I'm kind of curious too, Benny, we see your articles, we see all the DMs that you've been getting. How do you deal with mental health stuff? It's like you're always dealing positivity and negativity and like the constant feed through the community
and your team as well.
Yeah, like how do you take care of yourself and your team?
Yeah. Because for Asian Hustle Network, we get those inquiries.
Our brain hurts too, by the way,
all the time, and it gets very stressful. And you're definitely at the forefront. I think people are coming to you first because you are the leading source for Asian news.
Yeah.
So it must be very heavy on your shoulders for that.
Yeah, no, it's thanks for acknowledging that. I mean, I think that it's interesting because even prior, when we were doing like our pre-talk, I mean, I had mentioned that, a lot of people are angry and frustrated in our community right now. And clearly so. I mean, rightfully so because of, the rise in anti-Asian rhetoric and also the rise in, hate crimes targeting our community. I mean, it sucks to kind of see that. And of course, it's very personal. And of course, like it makes, it hits you on a personal level and frustrations and anger and emotion builds up. Right. And I think it's interesting because a lot of the times, like, my friends, when they're messaging me, friends and acquaintances, they share to express that anger with me. And sometimes, like, I feel like I need to be angrier when I respond back. But,
No.
looking back, I'm like, man, like, I guess, like, it's just that myself and our whole team, we've been doing this for like over a year now. And, we have covered hate crimes before in the past prior to the pandemic. And, but, from 2020 until now, to see that it's still like happening. I mean, right now I feel like our entire team just feels a little bit numb about everything. Yeah. It's been tough for us. I mean, because on one hand, right, you can kind of make an argument where it's like, okay, well, at least like NextShark's profile is growing and more people are knowing your brand and everything like that. And you guys are probably getting more traffic and more viewership, which is great. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, like in some aspects, yes, but this is not fun for us. Like writing, like, because you have to look at it this way. I mean, prior to the pandemic, I always said we were getting only like maybe 1 to 2 news tips a week, on an alleged hate crime targeting an Asian American. And, after the pandemic, we were getting up to 50 a day at some point. Right. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, as like reporters and with my team, they have to, of course they have to vet a lot of these stories. They have to talk to sources. Right. And a lot of the times they're subject to viewing a lot of distressing content. And I'll tell you, like, people have sent us like really horrific videos that have nothing to do with it. They just wanted to send to troll or to do certain things. And it's not, and it hits us, it hurts. It really, hits us on an emotional and mental level. And oftentimes for me, I constantly check up on my team. We constantly check up on each other. I've even, had like mental health therapy sessions with my team. I've also given our team mental health breaks, paid time off for mental health too. Because like, it's hard doing these things. And I even question, is that enough? Because none of us are really trained for this. I don't know if reporters that go to school are trained for, the aspect of that, because covering such personal news that hits your community, it can be very daunting. And for us, we're also still trying to figure out, media has been around for a while, but, how do we evolve as a media company to kind of stand the test of time? Because at the end of the day, our workers are also humans too. And I worry for them every single day because, it's because these cases are still happening and they're required to still report on these incidences that are happening. So, we're still trying to figure it out, but it's something that I remain cognizant of. And I think that I make a big effort to try to catch up and do all one-on-ones with every single member of my team, regardless of, their position in this company.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate such an honest answer. I think, at the end of the day, we're still figuring it out, and it's not going to be an easy answer. We're still going through, the racism and the attacks, and I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. But, as long as we have each other, I think that's like the first step, right? And for you to be at the forefront, just educating and raising awareness, it helps so much.
Yeah. Thank you to your team and you, Benny, and NextShark, mm-hmm. because you guys represent the source that we go to for unity. Mm-hmm. Like the events that you guys put together, including yesterday, and Daniel Day Kim, Daniel Wu, those are important to mobilizing our community. And that's coming from you, Benny. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that, dude, because we need more leaders like yourself. And unfortunately, when you look around our community, we don't see a lot of them. And it's not an easy road to assume. It's really not. We're getting a taste of it right now through Asian Hustle Network, but we're like, we're not towards Benny level.
Nah, don't even, guys. You guys, I mean, here's how I see it. I think that, we all have to kind of grow together. And I think that oftentimes, like, I see this not just with like, Asian communities too, like other communities as well. I mean, I think that the how I always look at it is I prefer to try to, build up, as high as we can amongst each other, as opposed to trying to tear down each other and try to, because like, if we use that sort of approach, it's, nobody is going to rise up. And so I think that the Asian Hustle Network, what you guys have built, is like just as important. And, to kind of see, such a healthy community that has kind of like, that has kind of sprung up. I mean, come on, I see like, aspiring young entrepreneurs getting on and so many people like helping out. I see, older generation, Asian Americans, helping people. And I even seen like, people potentially raising funding within that platform too. I mean, so many cool opportunities that have spawned out of it. And man, I mean, I remember when I was just first starting out as an entrepreneur, it was so difficult just trying to find that list of Asian American business owners to kind of get advice, to see like what that's like. And the fact that you guys offer that platform, like that's huge, man. Seriously. So I wouldn't discount what you guys have built too. And, so seriously, hats off to you guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Benny.
you. That means a lot to us.
Yeah, appreciate that. And we understand that you are becoming a dad pretty soon. Congratulations.
Congrats.
Yeah, I know, my first kid. I'm very excited. I have no idea like what I'm getting myself into, but I'm going to do the best I can. And, it's interesting. Like when things, especially when you're going through tough times like these, like you really wonder, it's like, when you bring children into the world, like how do you want to, bring them in? And, how do you want to give them, a good like kind of breakdown of how the world works and their function, and how should they function. And also when you're raising a kid that's also might go through the same challenges as a person of color in this country too. I mean, I'm thinking about all those things, and I'm definitely very like humbled by the responsibility and everything, and I'm definitely looking forward to being a dad.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
That's why we want to ask that question too, because we understand that, it's a big responsibility becoming a new parent. Like, out of curiosity, like what kind of legacy did you want to leave for them through Next Shark to make their world a better place than it was ours?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that, it's interesting because, and I don't know if this relates in any way, but, I don't know. I still don't exactly know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I think that I'm a marketer by trade. I'm a content creator by trade. And, there has been some level of success with Next Shark. I also advise and, have like other side businesses too in different industries. And, I think that I'm still trying to really figure out, where that sort of legacy, quote unquote, is going to be. But I think that, overall, I've always had this deep need to want to help people. I think that, I don't know if it's because maybe my upbringing or something, but I think that in the context of Next Shark, right, I've always been asked, what I want to do with this. Is this something I want to sell, or is this something that, I want to, go public or something like that? And don't get me wrong, I'm a capitalist, I'm an entrepreneur. If like some big, crazy opportunity, is given to us on the table, like I'm happy to consider, as long as like it benefits, the people below me too, that have like, worked so hard to build this company. Right. But honestly, at the end of the day, and I do mean this, and I played this conversation ahead with me like over and over again. And I'm like, even if like it's too early, like if Next Shark, if it's too early for Next Shark to kind of be that, big voice, that big network for Asian Americans. And how our story ends is that we at least help inspire the next generation of Asian Americans to a bigger and better than us. I mean, that's all we could hope for. And I think that goes along too for anybody that's trying to build something in the context of, the Asian American community. Because if we look in the past, I mean, a lot of sacrifices had to be made by people before us, right? And they probably wanted to, there's been media companies like prior to Next Shark that try to do it at that scale. Like maybe it was too early. Maybe, their voices weren't being heard at the time. And, and those people have to be acknowledged, because without people like Angry Asian Man, without people like, Yoke Magazine, Eric Nakamura from, Giant Robot, or Jeff Yang, who had like A Magazine. I mean, without those people, I wouldn't be here today, And so if my story is paving the way forward for everyone else, then dude, like, why not? I will leave this world a grateful man. And I hope that is the one legacy that I can leave.
Love that.
That's very powerful. We feel the same way about Asian Hustle Network. I think, just the older generations kind of paving the way for us.
We look up to Asian Avenue.
Yeah, Asian Avenue. They like really set that foundation. And if, it wasn't for them, I don't think that Asian Hustle Network would be as strong, And so we hope that we could set that foundation for the next generation to come as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, it's just collaborations all around, and, we just want to, we just want to build a good community at the end of the day, right? And leave the world better than when we found it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly. Do you have any specific ultimate goal for NextShark, or is it more of like, because when I first read NextShark articles, I was just so inspired to see that there was a media outlet for Asians specifically. If you go to like the major news outlets, they won't focus on those like, smaller stories that may not make it on national television. And so for me, just personally reading those articles, seeing like Asian excellence stories, Asian entrepreneurship, it was just so inspiring to me. And so do you have like that ultimate goal for NextShark, that, end game for NextShark? Or is it more of like, you just want to inspire the younger generation of Asians to be able to see people like them on media outlets?
And out of curiosity too, like how do you continue hiring the right talent to continue building out that vision that you ultimately want for NextShark?
Oh man, those are all really good questions, because like the way I run my company is so unorthodox. Mm-hmm. It's very unorthodox. And because I think that there really isn't like a perfect linear path to creating a company. I'll tell you, I mean, this is funny. Like, that most, like, I would say that 90% of my team members, I found them on Craigslist a long time ago. And a lot of my team members, they've been around for a long time. I mean, one, my managing editor, he's been with us for 5 years. My second in command in this company and editor in chief, he's been with me for 7 years now. This was his first job out of college, and he stayed with me until then. And I think that for me is that, and I don't want to be all cliche and just be like, oh yeah, we're trying to be a family here or what have you. I think that, for me, it's that, I think that when I'm building a team, like I really try to look at who they are as a person. I don't really look at too much like, how much experience you have. I look more about like, how driven you are and, how open-minded you are with how the world is. And I think that I make an effort to, I make an effort to really get to know everybody in my company on a very like, on as deep of a level as I can, because I think that ultimately like they're going to be, driving this boat forward, if I'm not around. I think that the way I run my company is like, I try to have as much open communication as possible. I don't come off as someone that I'm not the type of CEO where I go like, oh yeah, we're on this crazy path to success. We're going to be a multi-billion-dollar company 7 years down the line. And I think that that's a rhetoric that a lot of, that we see a lot. Right. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just that because when we're dealing with VCs and you're dealing with investors, you have to sell that vision moving forward. And oftentimes that vision translates back to the company. Right now, in the context of NextShark and where we're going, I mean, again, I still don't necessarily know yet. I mean, all I can say is I enjoy what we're doing. And one thing is for sure is that I want to make sure that I keep my team together in the best way possible. I try to make sure that, I am putting them in an environment where they can continue to, not only grow this company, but to hopefully grow themselves as individuals. I have this personal sort of mantra in my mind that, whoever I hire, like, I don't care if they want to stay here for a year. I don't care if like they, if they want to stay for the long term. I don't care if they see us as a potential stepping stone for a bigger thing. I just want to leave them better than when we found them. And I think that, as if we can, use that as what our goals are, I think that we will be moving towards the right direction. I understand that that's not really a linear way to answer it. But again, I mean, I'm a business owner. I've been doing this for a while, but I'm still trying to figure it out. And so if you guys take away from any of this is that, you might still be trying to figure it out even after 10, 15 years down the line. And that should be perfectly okay.
Yeah. I love that. I love that a lot. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs come into our podcast as well. And that line too, it's like, you just kind of figure out as you go along. Doesn't matter how successful you are, you're still going to face with that area where you're like, what am I doing? And that also sometimes leads down imposter syndrome. Like, what am I really doing? But yeah,
exactly.
It's a normal part of the entrepreneur journey for everyone listening. It doesn't matter how successful you are or where you are in your journey. You're going to feel that way always.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, Brian and I have talked to so many entrepreneurs, and even as established as they are, they still go through imposter syndrome.
It's just crazy to us to hear. It's like, bro.
And we always act like we have, as Asian Americans too, because of our upbringing, we always like approach things as if we have something to prove no matter what. It's like,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Benny, I would love to ask, we know you have like a lot of hobbies. I know you used to be a poker player. You're a partner at a fish market. Want to know like, what are your kind of like routines and like things that you like to do outside of work?
Yeah, it's I'm a big foodie, so I love to cook at home. I'm always like finding different ways. I just cooked yakitori at my backyard for my wife like last week. Obviously, and I'm a part owner at a fish market in LA too. So I'm really big on we're really big on sustainability and everything. And there's a community there too. I mean, I love stuff like that. And then another thing that I think it's funny. I mean, I'm going to mention this. So I'm a big like badminton fan. I play a lot of badminton. I first discovered the sport in high school, and I got really, really into it to the point where at one point when I was in high school, I was actually ranked 16th in the nation, wow. in boys single, under 19 boys singles. And I was actually sponsored by a Japanese company as a junior for about 2 years. I was playing tournaments, I was playing junior nationals and everything. When COVID started, I mean, I kind of got back into it. I mean, granted, I couldn't go to a gym to play, but I was able to, kind of like, start working out a little bit. And, I would just like play with my wife for fun a little bit. And so when the gym started opening back up, I started playing with some friends again. And so, I still try to find time to, play with my friends if I have to, if I can. And so that's something that I like to do on my spare time. My life is pretty simple. I mean, if it's daytime, I'm usually working. If it's not, I'm either, spending time with, my wife and family. If it's not that, then I'm probably playing badminton somewhere with my friends.
Wow. Very interesting. That. Yeah. Love it. Yeah. And so we have one last question for you, Benny. And that is, what one advice could you give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
Or back when you first started, what was the one advice would you have given yourself right out of college?
You are going to be in for one hell of a ride. So what I will say is that, whatever you're doing, right? Like, it's a ride, building a company is a ride, and there's going to be ups and downs. And I think that a lot of the times we laser thin, we go in laser focused on those particular moments, like down moments, you're like, oh my God, like this is horrible. This is like not going to work out. And on your high moments, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Right. And so what I would recommend is to try to look at it from a bird's eye view and to see the averages, because, at the end of the day, it's a journey. Right. And I think that learn to try to enjoy that ride of those ups and downs, because when you're going down and when things are not working, that's actually the best time for you to grow. That's actually the best time for you to really look inside of yourself and to figure out to find that moment, that sort of like epiphany, right? Like that's where when you're kind of backed into that corner, that's where most of your creative juices, start to flow. And when all is said and done, I mean, even for me, the first thing I did the day that I made the Forbes 30 under 30 list, right? I remember it was like maybe 10 minutes of crazy celebrations, but, really the next hour and the rest of the day was really thinking about, damn, just to see like where I've come from up until now, seeing all those like sleepless nights, seeing those times when, you were a nobody, no one really, would answer your phones, and, when, and your parents, seemingly disappointed in your work, to, wondering, crap, is this right for me? Am I better off working somewhere else? Am I just going to be like a nobody, forever, or whatever it is? I mean, those are that journey was what I really, really remember. So I would say, as a long-winded answer, yeah, you're in for a hell of a ride. So please just enjoy it.
Yeah. I love that advice too. And, enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey, all the ups and downs. Everything offers an opportunity to get better, grow, learn. Mm-hmm. And one more thing too, from my personal experience, never underestimate how much can happen in 1 year. Keep on preparing yourself mentally every day. It's all going to eventually compound together, where you're going to look back and be like, oh, I'm so glad I did that, even though I failed, because you're going to draw on that experience to make the next decision.
Yes. And trust the process. Enjoy the process. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, Benny, where can our listeners find out more about you and NextShark online?
My social media handles are just Benny Luo, at Benny Luo everywhere, my full name. Next Shark is also at Next Shark at everywhere. So, feel free to connect with us there. And yeah, I mean, that's about it. I mean, I really appreciate you guys bringing me on. Seriously. I mean, I've been a fan. I've equally just been a fan of you guys. I still remember when you guys still had only like a couple hundred or a couple thousand people or something.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool, honestly. I actually look forward to seeing your guys' posts on my Facebook feed, because I feel like every day I'm seeing a new entrepreneur talking about what the cool things they're working on, and I'm learning more and more about our industry. So I feel like your platform is just as equally important, and so I'm just so happy that you guys exist, and I look forward to seeing what else you guys have in store.
Awesome. Thank you, Benny.
Thank you,
appreciate
Benny.
you.
That means so much to us. And, I know Brian and Benny connected before, but, this is the first time I'm getting to know you on this level, Benny. And I just wanted to say thank you for all that you do. Thank you for shining light on, news for Asians and Asian Americans. And you're just truly incredible. So thank you.
Thank you, Benny.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you both.
Hey, guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the show.
We would like to get to the top 10 on iTunes, so be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We release an episode every single Wednesday, so stay tuned.
Thank you guys so much.